Trump and his supporters believed they held the advantage until Crockett calmly delivered a truth so direct that it left them speechless. The room wasn't hot from the weather, but from rising tension. You could feel it through the broadcast. The subtle shifts in posture, pens gripped a little tighter, fingers tapping nervously on desks. Washington, D.C. has hosted its share of heated hearings, but this one carried a different weight. It wasn't just about political debate. It was about influence, truth, and image. The hearing's official focus was recent ethics breaches in political leadership, but as soon as the conversation turned to Trump, the mood intensified, like pressure building in a sealed pot. C-SPAN had already stitched together a highlight reel of jabs and accusations. Committee members from Arkansas, Florida, and Tennessee leaned heavily on familiar phrases about fake news and media bias. A few Democrats pushed back, tired of hearing the same evasions. Representative Jasmine Crockett remained silent. She observed. Occasionally, she jotted down notes, highlighted lines in red, but mostly, she watched. Her gaze followed each speaker carefully, testing for honesty, for authenticity, and found little of either. Chairman Reynolds struck the gavel twice. His voice showed strain, though he attempted to project control. "We're not here to argue campaign events," he stated. "We're here to evaluate leadership accountability." Everyone knew the claim was superficial. Representative Alden Keith, a Republican from Mississippi, leaned forward with a grin, as if preparing to deliver a punchline. "If we're judging based on tone," he said, laughing with his colleagues, "we might need to clear out half the room." His side chuckled. Crockett didn't react. She didn't even flinch. Beside her, a young aide, likely fresh from graduate school, leaned in. "Should I add Keith's comments to the record?" he asked. She gave a single nod. "To it." One word. Calm and firm. The tone made the aide sit up a little straighter. A sneeze came from behind. A cough followed, but no one disturbed the pace of the ongoing exchanges. Then came Representative Marla Denzin from Arizona. Tall, polished, media-aware. She adjusted her blouse, cleared her throat, deliberately, and began a long defense of Trump's rally comments, framing them as raw, emotional honesty. Her speech echoed familiar media narratives, almost rehearsed. Crockett's pen stopped. Her hand went still. She didn't sigh or interrupt, but her jaw tightened, visibly. Denzin concluded, "We've all said things in the heat of the moment. The former president is no exception." And once again the room quieted. Not silent, just expectant. Chairman Reynolds glanced at the list before him. He hesitated. The chair now recognizes Representative Jasmine Crockett of Texas. Heads turned. Some leaned back, bracing for spectacle. A few rolled their eyes, but others leaned in. They knew something important might follow. Crockett set her pen down. She adjusted her microphone, neither hurriedly nor dramatically, just with purpose. Then she looked up, first at the chairman, then at the Republican members. Her expression wasn't angry. It was focused. "I've been listening," she began. Her voice was steady, yet it carried more weight than everything said before. "And I think some of us are more concerned with defending emotions than addressing facts." There was movement, chairs shifting, papers rustling, but she didn't stop, because when truth feels like an attack, it usually means we're avoiding it. No theatrics, no raised voice, just straightforward statements, delivered clearly, like someone switching on a light. And yet, the brightest moment was still to come. It took place in Grand Rapids, Michigan, just 6 days before the hearing. What was meant to be a routine campaign rally turned into a national flashpoint. Around 12,000 attendees filled the converted convention center, flags draped across every wall. The energy was typical, loud, energized, and expected, until it wasn't. Trump stood at the podium, smiling confidently, soaking in the applause. He opened with familiar lines: Biden's age, bogus indictments, China, inflation. But then, his message shifted. "And if you're not loyal," he said, gesturing toward the cameras, "you're part of the problem. We don't need more weaklings pretending to serve the people. We need warriors who fight for the right people." The crowd erupted. Some chanted, others simply shouted. But what caused concern wasn't just the noise. It was one particular sentence, unscripted and absent from any teleprompter. Leaning into the mic, Trump said, They keep calling for accountability. What about theirs? What about the people trying to tear down everything we built? I say we deal with them the old-fashioned way." He paused, long enough for the statement to land. He didn't specify who they were. He didn't need to. The crowd went wild, fists raised. One woman held up a sign reading, "Bring back the real America." Phones recorded it all. Social media exploded. Within hours, the clip dominated the news. Media outlets ran it repeatedly. Commentators debated whether Trump had again encouraged violence. But for Jasmine Crockett, the issue wasn't volume. It was the message beneath the noise. She rewatched the footage 4 times that night, catching new details each time. The timing, the shift in the crowd, the sharpness in Trump's tone, at old-fashioned way. Leaning back in her chair, her laptop lighting the room, in her Capitol Hill apartment, she opened a folder titled January 6th Fallout. Dozens of files stared back, transcripts, screenshots, internal reports. The pattern was hard to miss. Trump wasn't simply inciting anger, he was testing boundaries again. At 11:17 p.m. she called her aide. "Luca, you still up?" "Barely," he replied, half asleep. "I need you to compare the Grand Rapids speech to his Tallahassee address from last year and check if any of the same language shows up in Proud Boys message boards." No hesitation. On it. By morning, her office was quietly buzzing. 2 interns reviewed legal texts. A junior researcher flagged a link between Trump's speech and a memo circulated by a political action committee just 48 hours prior. By 10, she had a full outline, a build-up of provocative language, framed just carefully enough to avoid direct blame, yet clearly intended to incite a pattern, a strategy. This wasn't typical political theater. It was a calculated script, and it had worked before. But Crockett wasn't looking for headlines. She wasn't interested in trending clips. Her goal was something far more rare, and in political circles, far more threatening: accountability. So when she sat silent through the hearing's opening remarks, it wasn't due to lack of input. It was because she intended to be the last voice anyone would remember. Others came with rehearsed lines. Crockett came with evidence. As she finalized her statement, there was no mirror rehearsal, no pacing, just one printed sheet. One sentence circled at the bottom. "If telling the truth makes you uncomfortable, maybe it's not me you're angry with. Maybe it's the mirror." She read it aloud once, then placed it in her folder. Outside, satellite trucks lined Independence Avenue. Protesters on both sides clashed behind metal barriers. The temperature on the street matched the mood inside: overheated, polarized, no space for neutrality. Inside, Crockett stayed composed. When her moment came, she knew exactly what she wanted to say, and exactly why she needed to say it. But first, the posturing had to end. By Thursday, Jasmine Crockett was running on caffeine, determination, and an ever-growing pile of documents. Her staff was no stranger to long hours, but this week felt different. No one said it aloud, but the atmosphere in the office was tense and focused, like prepping for a courtroom showdown. Her chief of staff, Dana Hollis, slid a folder across the desk. "This just came in from the oversight request. It's worse than we expected." Crockett flipped through the pages, emails between a sitting lawmaker and a private strategist linked to 2 pro-Trump nonprofits, shared phrases, talking points, and clear overlap with Trump's Grand Rapids remarks. "They're not even trying to hide it," she said. "Nope," Dana replied. "They're betting on distraction. We're not giving them one," Crockett said, as she pulled a legal pad closer, outlining dates, quotes, and names. Every entry had purpose. This wasn't about exchanging sound bites. It was about building a case. Luca stepped in, holding a stack of printed screenshots. "That phrase you asked about, the old-fashioned way, it's shown up in 3 militia forums. They're using it like a signal." She nodded. "That's what I needed." By mid-afternoon, the conference room looked like a strategy center. Notes covered the walls, with a timeline stretching from early 2020 to the present. Key phrases were marked in red. But this wasn't about social media or headline. It was about showing the difference between rhetoric and real harm, between opinion and calculated messaging. Dana checked her phone. "Reynolds' office says they're planning to cut your time tomorrow. Denzin and Keith are getting more minutes." Crockett didn't look up. "Let them. I only need 5. She meant it. That evening, With the sun setting behind the Washington Monument, Crockett stepped out of the office alone. Luca offered her a ride, but she declined. "I need the walk." She headed down Constitution Avenue, headphones in, phone silent, thinking. At the corner of First and Independence, a woman stopped her. Middle-aged, navy cardigan, groceries in hand. She hesitated, then said, "I saw you speak about that veteran housing bill last month. You were the only one who made sense." Crockett smiled, genuinely, but tired. "Thank you." The woman glanced down, then back at her. "Don't let them shrink you. They're good at that." Crockett paused, letting it sink in. "I'm not shrinking," she said. "I'm sharpening." That night, she sat at her kitchen table, the city lights faint through the window. Mika, her aging bulldog mix, snored nearby. Crockett wrote slowly, not drafting a speech, just organizing thoughts. She thought about the woman with the groceries, Dana's concern, Luca's research, and the hundreds of messages in her inbox. Some supportive, others hostile. They didn't intimidate her anymore, but they reminded her why her words had to count. Not for headlines. For people. Some were single parents raising kids who had never seen a leader speak plainly. Some were teenagers told to stay silent. Others were simply tired. Tired of the noise. She circled a line at the bottom of her notes. Then she closed the pad and got some rest. At 6:20 the next morning, she was back at the office. Hair tied back, black blazer, one folder in hand. "Ready?" Dana asked. "Let's go." In the elevator down to the garage, Luca whispered, "You think they'll try to cut you off?" Crockett didn't blink. "They can try." By the time she sat at the hearing table, she wasn't preparing anymore. She was ready. The hearing resumed at 9:03 a.m. The room was packed. Every seat filled. Every camera aimed forward. Reporters wore press badges like medals. More than one aide shuffled papers while secretly recording with their phones. Crockett was already in her seat. Eyes steady. Posture deliberate. She wore a deep navy suit, simple but sharp. Her only accessory, a slim gold pin on her lapel, a gift from her late grandmother, a reminder of who she represented. Representative Alden Keith wasted no time reclaiming the floor, speaking loudly, confidently, and just smug enough to sound rehearsed. "What we're seeing here," Keith began, gesturing theatrically, "is a staged attempt to turn the words of a former president into some kind of disaster narrative. Honestly, the American public is tired of this political performance." Crockett tilted her head slightly, the way a teacher might when a student tries to pass off someone else's work. Then it was Representative Denzin's turn. She leaned in slightly, speaking with that slow, intentional rhythm she often used to appear more genuine than she was. "No matter your political beliefs," she said, locking eyes with the camera, "we have to recognize that President Trump speaks to the heart of America. Are his words perfect? No. But perfect words don't bring change. Passion does." A single clap came from the back before someone hushed it. Crockett remained silent. She opened her folder and removed a single page. Her notes. No theatrics, no dramatics. She simply placed it on the desk, face up. Chairman Reynolds exhaled audibly. He looked like someone who no longer wanted to mediate a fight. "I believe Representative Crockett has been waiting patiently," he said. "You have the floor." Crockett didn't begin immediately. She adjusted her microphone, letting a moment of quiet settle in the room. Then she raised her eyes, not toward her fellow lawmakers, but to the row of reporters along the right side of the room. "When I was growing up in Dallas," she began, "my mother told me something I've never forgotten. You don't need to raise your voice to be heard. You just need to speak the truth." Some rolled their eyes. Others leaned forward. "So, let me do that." She pulled a printed email from her folder. "This is a February 8th message between a staffer for Representative Keith and a strategist from a political action committee. Subject line, language for rally alignment." The email includes a request to match the tone used by former President Trump at a January event in Florida. Keith shifted in his chair. A camera shutter clicked in the distance. Crockett kept reading. Steady, unfazed. Quote, "Push strong emotional cues. Use fight, take back, and old ways to show strength. Avoid passive messaging." She looked up. "That's not passion. That's strategy." Denzin raised her hand, but Crockett continued. "Now let's consider the timing." The Grand Rapids speech was delivered just 2 days after this memo went out to 5 congressional offices, And suddenly we hear nearly identical language used in 3 separate public statements by lawmakers that same week. Madam Chair, Denzin interrupted. Is this an ethics hearing or a conspiracy theory session? Crockett stayed composed. She looked to the chair. If someone is uncomfortable, I recommend they dispute the facts, not the person presenting them. Chairman Reynolds straightened his tie. Let the representative continue. Crockett returned to her notes. We're not here to discuss feelings. We're here because language shapes behavior. When a former president uses phrases that match talking points distributed within official channels, almost word for word, that's not chance. That's coordination. The room went still. You could hear someone breathing. In the second row, Crockett scanned the room, her voice softening slightly. Because when truth feels like a threat, it often means we're avoiding it. No reaction. No movement. She let the silence hang, and just before the moment passed, she leaned forward, elbows on the desk, eyes on the Republican side. If the truth makes you uncomfortable, she said evenly, maybe your frustration isn't with me. Maybe it's with the mirror. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It carried weight. What happened next confirmed the impact of her words. Silence doesn't always mean quiet. Sometimes it's heavier than any debate. And in that room, filled with officials, aides, cameras, and reporters, it landed with force. For a few long seconds, no one moved. Not Keith. Not Denzin. Not even Reynolds, who had seemed ready all morning for disruption. You could sense the tension in every glance. No one had been named, yet they all felt seen. Crockett didn't smirk or lean back. She didn't react at all. She just let the moment sit. Not dramatic, just deliberate. Her words weren't crafted to provoke. They were designed to cut cleanly, precise and impossible to overlook. Somewhere in the back row, an intern dropped a pen. The small sound snapped a few people out of their daze, but no one spoke. Then slowly, Representative Keith exhaled sharply and shifted in his seat, clearly preparing a response. He adjusted his mic and began, with all due respect, but Crockett raised a finger. Let me finish. Her tone was firm, not confrontational. Even Chairman Reynolds didn't interrupt. She continued, our job is to serve the public, not distort facts. I didn't come here to question anyone's patriotism. I'm here to remind us how far we've drifted from the truth. And that distance? It's not just in our words, it's in the consequences. She tapped the edge of her folder. January 6th wasn't a random event. It was the outcome of unchecked rhetoric, of people speaking boldly in public, then backpedaling when the consequences hit. Keith attempted again. Madam Chair, this is going beyond. This time, Reynolds cut in. You'll have your chance, Alden. That was unusual. Reynolds rarely broke protocol, but the tone in the room had shifted. He looked at Crockett with something between surprise and understanding. Representative Denzin scribbled notes, lips pressed tight. 2 seats down, Representative Garber, a quiet moderate from Pennsylvania, raised his eyebrows and murmured to a colleague, she's not wrong. The reporters in the room, those paying attention, recognized the moment. Some were already typing out quotes. Others messaged editors to prioritize coverage. Behind Crockett, Dana sat still for a moment, taking it in. A quiet breath caught in her chest. Luca? He was already trimming the clip on his phone. Technically, the hearing continued. Keith offered a lengthy rebuttal, filled with general legal language and references to free speech. Denzin tried to pivot to civility, steering clear of Crockett's arguments. But the energy had shifted. There were no applause lines, no confident chuckles. The tone felt colder, as if the room had been reset, and no one had dressed for it. Reynolds moved the agenda forward, trying to recover a sense of order, but it didn't quite land. What came next felt secondary. The room had already changed. By the time the session broke for lunch, the clip was already airing on 2 cable networks, trending on X, and appearing in TikToks set to emotional piano music. One version featured a caption in white text. She didn't raise her voice. She raised the standard. Crockett gathered her materials calmly. No rush, no delay. Outside, reporters crowded around. Congresswoman, was that line rehearsed? One asked. She paused, looked at the cameras, and said, no. It was just true. And the truth tends to carry louder than sound bites. That truth had already started to echo. When the committee reconvened an hour later, the mood was different, more contained, like everyone was carefully managing their tone. Even the page, pouring water, moved a little more quietly. Keith returned from the break, looking unsettled, glancing at Crockett from time to time. He didn't speak to her, but the way he flipped through his notes suggested nervous distraction more than preparation. Across the aisle, Denzin was on her phone, not scrolling, but rewatching something. It was the clip, the line now cycling through news tickers. Maybe it's not me you're angry with. Maybe it's the mirror. It wasn't just a viral quote. It struck a nerve. Representative Garber broke the silence first. As a new item came up, he leaned toward Crockett and quietly said, "You didn't just call them out, you stopped them cold." She glanced up, said nothing. She didn't have to. Garber leaned back, half smiling, as if he'd seen something unexpected and effective. As the committee moved through policy matters and procedural motions, Crockett's words still lingered. Members stumbled over prepared remarks. Their tones softened. They steered clear of loaded phrases, like witch hunt or patriotism under attack. Mentions of January 6th came with downcast eyes. It wasn't fear. It was acknowledgement. Crockett didn't react. She observed, like someone watching the final flakes settle in a shaken snow globe. Outside the room, things moved quickly. Reporters filled the hallways. Tweets quoted her line. A CNN banner read, "Crockett to GOP, maybe it's the mirror." Cable shows cut to the clip, with analysts weighing in on tone, ethics, and political fallout. But what resonated most wasn't an accusation. It was the absence of one. No finger pointing, no raised voice, no dramatic pause. Just a mirror, held steady. Inside the hearing room, Reynolds tried to bring the focus back to the agenda. "We'll now move to Committee Note 7 on PAC funding disclosures," he said, but few were paying attention. Even staff members were half focused on their phones. Denzin leaned toward Keith and said quietly, "She's already been quoted in 4 outlets." Keith's jaw tightened. Let them run with it. It'll pass. But even he didn't sound confident. What unsettled them wasn't just that Crockett had made a strong point. It was that she'd done it without dramatics, like calmly placing her evidence on the table and walking away. Reynolds eventually called for closing statements. A few representatives gave the usual polished wrap-ups, full of vague terms like unity, moving forward, and cutting through the noise. Then Reynolds turned back to Crockett. "Congresswoman Crockett, any final remarks?" She stood slowly and spoke with ease. "I don't need to repeat anything," she said. "The facts say enough. But I'll end with this. People are paying attention, not just voters or pundits, but students, families, veterans, and teachers. They're watching what we choose to normalize. And if we can't be honest here, we can't expect honesty anywhere else." That was all. No grand closing, just clarity. Reynolds gave a small nod and adjourned the session. As lawmakers exited, some gave her polite acknowledgments. Garver gave a subtle thumbs up. Most Republicans avoided eye contact, not out of embarrassment, but because they understood there was no way to respond without appearing reactive. In the hallway, Luca walked beside her, energized. "They're going to spend the next 2 days trying to reframe this." "I know," Crockett replied. Dana caught up with them, eyes on her screen. "You've been invited to appear on MSNBC, CBS, and surprisingly, Fox wants a quote too." Crockett smiled. "Tell them all the same thing. I said what needed to be said. I'm not here to argue it again." But the media wasn't looking for a fight. They were already cutting the highlight reel. By evening, her statement had moved beyond Capitol Hill. It had taken on a life of its own. Clips of her speech ran across every major news outlet. The phrase, "Maybe it's not me you're angry with. Maybe it's the mirror," shifted from a single line in a hearing to the top headline nationwide. CNN aired it every 30 minutes with a red banner reading, "Repet Crockett delivers striking statement on accountability." On MSNBC, analysts compared her delivery to Trump's rally language, calling her a clear voice amid the noise. Even Fox News covered it, though their framing was different. Crockett sparks backlash with mirror comment. Critics say it's personal, not policy. But the clip kept playing, and viewers kept responding. On TikTok, creators stitched it with commentary. This is what leadership sounds like. Teachers, nurses, veterans, people far from politics began sharing their own thoughts. Some called it overdue. Others said it echoed what they've been thinking for years. Hashtags surged. Mirror moment. Crockett was right. Say it plain. One post, just black background, with her quote in white text, hit 2 million views in 6 hours. In Portland, a woman used the audio to show her father's whistleblowing story in local government. In Detroit, a retired librarian played the clip over a video about misinformation in her church. The message crossed generations and political lines. At a bar in Columbus, Ohio, 2 men, one in a MAGA cap, the other in a Union jacket, watched the clip play silently on TV. When the quote appeared in captions, neither said anything at first. Then the man in the MAGA hat said, "She's not wrong." The other man smirked. "Didn't expect to hear you say that." "Doesn't mean I like her," he replied. "Just means she's not wrong." In Jackson, Mississippi, a high school civics class watched the video. One student asked, "If politicians know they're lying, why do they keep doing it?" The teacher answered, "Because they think people aren't paying attention." The student looked back at the screen. She made it hard not to. Even late-night hosts picked it up. They replayed the line, tried to spin jokes, but quickly moved on. The moment wasn't funny. It meant too much to reduce it to a punchline. By morning, Crockett's office had received over 11,000 emails, most of them messages of appreciation. A pastor in Kansas, a corrections officer in Ohio, a woman in Montana who had never voted before. But there were also darker messages, threats, hate mail, and subtle warnings, the kind that often arrive when a black woman speaks with too much clarity. Dana sorted through them quickly. "We flagged 6 serious ones. Capitol Police have been notified." Crockett didn't react. "Any from constituents?" she asked. "None," Dana replied. "Then they don't matter," Crockett said. By the afternoon, Crockett was trending on platforms she didn't even use. Her quote had been printed on shirts, featured in digital artwork, cited on podcasts, and repeated by both military leaders and high school debaters. But the attention wasn't really about her. It was about the sentence, the mirror. It struck a nerve because people were exhausted. Exhausted by mixed messages, shifting narratives, and silence from those in power. Crockett's line wasn't just a response. It was a direct statement. It wasn't loud. It was deliberate. Still, as the praise poured in, Crockett sat in her office, door half closed, scanning headlines and drinking cold coffee. Dana entered with a tablet. "CBS wants you on Sunday Morning Live tomorrow." Crockett didn't look up. "I'll go if they want to talk policy, not personalities." Dana raised an eyebrow. "That's a tough sell." "I'm not aiming to be a soundbite," Crockett replied. "I want people to remember what I said, not just that I said it." But others were already working to shift the focus, and they were just getting started. By Saturday, the resistance began to show. Crockett's quote wasn't just echoing. It was disrupting the narrative. It had reached briefings, Sunday talk show rundowns, and even family conversations in areas where politics rarely budged. That made Trump's circle uneasy. It started quietly. Pundits on conservative radio labeling the line performative. Words like scripted, calculated, and divisive appeared across right-leaning outlets. But it didn't stick, at least not yet, because it was difficult to discredit a statement that didn't name anyone. By Monday, the rhetoric intensified. A Trump-aligned PAC issued a statement accusing Crockett of targeted harassment using weaponized language designed to divide. The irony didn't go unnoticed. Keith posted a screenshot from the hearing, writing, "Another Democrat chasing virality. That's not leadership. That's performance." It received 8,000 likes. But the replies told a different story. "Then why didn't you address her points? She didn't name you. Why so defensive?" Denzin appeared on a morning show, trying to shift attention. "The Congresswoman raised some points," she said with a polished smile, "but she also raised the temperature during a hearing meant for collaboration. We have to ask what's more important, making the loudest point or making progress." Crockett watched the clip on mute from her kitchen, sipping tea. The question didn't faze her. She had already answered it, clearly and calmly. Meanwhile, Dana walked outside her office, reading updates aloud. Fox has a panel tonight, titled, "Did Crockett Go Too Far?" Keith's team posted a meme showing you holding a mirror like a weapon. Newsmax says you're part of a radical truth offensive. Whatever that means. Crockett still didn't look up. "Let them talk," This isn't just noise, Dana said. It's strategic. They're trying to bury the message in distraction. I know, Crockett said, looking up now. But they're shouting because they've got nothing stronger. And she was right. Every attempt to discredit her brought the clip back. Every time they called her emotional, the facts resurfaced. She hadn't attacked individuals. She had exposed patterns. And that was harder to dismiss. Still, pressure mounted. Supportive emails from colleagues began arriving, but with caution. One said, Jasmine, your speech was strong. Just a heads up, leadership's getting nervous. Too much spotlight. Another read, we're with you, but people are asking if you're planning to go off script again next week. Crockett showed both to Dana. They want me to step back. Dana shook her head. You won't. No, Crockett said. But they're not going to stop trying. That evening, a surprising invitation arrived. An appearance on the table. A major national Sunday political roundtable. Filmed in Los Angeles. High profile, live, and usually reserved for senior lawmakers. Dana called her the moment she saw it. This is different. Not just a short panel. A full segment. Long form. You'll be seated next to former governors and national correspondents. Crockett didn't hesitate. Book it. But Dana offered a note of caution. They'll try to steer it toward the drama, not the message. Crockett nodded. Then I'll stay with the message. If they want to talk about the mirror, I'll ask why they're avoiding their reflection. Dana smiled. By Friday, the studio was ready. Crockett flew to Burbank without fanfare. Just Luca in a shoulder bag full of notes. Backstage, a producer leaned over and asked, Any topics you'd prefer to avoid? Just one, Crockett said. The producer paused. Which one? Pretending we're not in a leadership crisis, she replied. I'm not here to perform. I'm here to speak honestly. But the voice waiting for her on that stage wouldn't just push back. It would test her more than expected. It was late, almost 11:30 p.m. in Washington, D.C. The office was dark, except for a faint glow in Jasmine Crockett's corner room. Everyone else had left hours ago, but she remained, half sitting on the windowsill watching headlights glide through the Capitol parking lot. Her appearance on the table had aired just hours earlier. By most accounts, she delivered exactly what she intended. Clear, calm, and grounded in facts. Social media was buzzing, full of clips and praise. But her focus wasn't on the noise. Her phone rang. A private number. She hesitated. Most private calls meant problems, or at least distractions. Still, something told her to pick up. Representative Crockett? The voice was low, raspy, and older, familiar, but unexpected. This is Jasmine, she answered, steady. It's Stephen Kellum. Kellum, a Republican from Iowa, in his 70s, had served in Congress longer than some staffers had been alive. Known for being stern but respected, they'd only exchanged words once. I wasn't expecting your call, she said. I imagine not, he replied, then paused. I saw the hearing, the coverage, that line. It stuck with me. He hesitated again. Maybe it's not me you're angry with. Maybe it's the mirror. That one stayed with people, she replied. I'm calling to admit something, he said. Not on the record, just from one person to another, someone I think might actually care. She stayed silent, just listening. I was in Congress when Nixon resigned. I remember the silence in the chamber, the weight of it. I thought we'd learned. I thought we'd correct course. He paused. But lately, I've been voting on autopilot. Maybe even out of fear. Fear of being the one who breaks ranks, who speaks up when it's inconvenient. Crockett closed her eyes for a second. She hadn't expected this. I've defended things I shouldn't have. Stayed quiet when I knew better, he said. I don't know if that line was meant for people like me, but it landed. I wasn't thinking of anyone specific, she said. Just the pattern, the silence, the avoidance. I know, he replied. And that's why I'm calling. Another pause. I'm retiring at the end of this term. That's not public yet. But before I go, I want to do one thing that feels right. I want to co-sponsor your ethics reform bill. That bill had been stalled for months. No Republican had touched it. Quietly, if you'd prefer, he added. I don't want quiet, she said. I want honest. Kellum gave a short laugh. Hard to find these days. That's why I keep asking for it. He exhaled, not tired, more like release. People are listening now, he said. More than you think. Don't pull back. I wasn't planning to. I'll let you go. You've got a long road ahead, he said. Thanks, she replied, for saying what you didn't have to. He cleared his throat, then hung up. She sat in silence, phone in her lap, city lights flickering through the window. It wasn't about clicks or trending tags. It never had been. Sometimes the real impact shows up in the quiet moments, when someone finally chooses truth over routine. She stood, stretched, and glanced at her reflection in the glass. Not leading by title, but by choice. Not waiting for permission, but speaking with purpose. And she still had one message left. One meant for more than lawmakers. Sunday morning arrived calm and gray. Clouds hung low over the city. There were no breaking alerts, no new interviews, no live broadcasts with her face plastered across the screen. The storm had passed, or at least paused. Jasmine Crockett sat at her kitchen table, drinking black coffee in a worn hoodie from college. No cameras, no script, just her notebook and Mika, her dog, curled nearby. She hadn't turned on the news. She didn't need to. She already knew what they were saying, that she'd gone viral, that she was sparking conversation, that some saw her as the party's future, and others saw her as a threat. But labels didn't matter. What mattered was that, for once, people were asking why, not just who. She flipped through her notebook, past quotes, speeches, half-drafted ideas, and stopped on a page she'd scribbled weeks earlier. Leadership isn't about winning the room. It's about being willing to stand alone in it. She underlined it once. Later that day, she returned to the office for a short staff meeting. Dana was already typing at the table. Luca dropped a stack of printed requests, media interviews, school invites, donation offers. Pause all appearances for the week, Crockett said. Dana looked up. You sure? The momentum's big. That's exactly why, Crockett said. I want the message to breathe, not get buried in the rush. Luca raised an eyebrow. You think people will move on that quickly? They usually do, she said. But that's not the point. She leaned back. I didn't say that line to be remembered. I said it because it was true. If people forget it next week or repeat it for years, the truth doesn't change. She turned toward the window, watching people walk below, unaware of how much had shifted in a quiet committee room days ago. This was never about Trump, or Keith, or headlines, she said. It's about what happens when we stop excusing things just because we're used to them. Dana shut her laptop. So what's next? Crockett turned around. Her voice was steady, but resolved. I want us to figure out what comes after the mirror. Luca looked confused. Meaning, we've shown people the reflection, she said. Now we ask what they want to change. All of us. Not just them. There was a beat of silence. Then Dana smiled, not out of politeness, but in recognition. That evening, Crockett recorded a short message in her office. No camera crew, just a phone on a tripod and a single lamp. People keep asking me what I meant when I said, maybe it's not me you're angry with. Maybe it's the mirror. I think deep down, we all know what it means. We all carry things we haven't faced. Personal, political, institutional. But I said it because I still believe we're capable of honesty. Not curated truth, real honesty. Even when it's uncomfortable, especially then. So here's the mirror again. Not just for lawmakers, for everyone watching. For me, if we want better leaders, we have to expect better and be better, all of us. She posted it without a caption. No hashtags. By the next morning, it had been shared over 5 million times. Because sometimes, all it takes is one voice to spark awareness, one sentence to hold a room, one mirror to make us finally see what we've been avoiding. Crockett didn't need to raise her voice. She never did. She just needed to say what others wouldn't. And if that made people uncomfortable, maybe it wasn't her they were angry with. If this message resonated with you, hit subscribe, share the moment. Let the truth outlive the noise. Let it be the start of something that matters.